how that influences the way I view the school. The critical thing for me is that you get to know the people in the school rather than just a website. Obviously not many people here today, so it doesn't always work, but that's the idea. And another thing I was asked to do recently was I'm frequently asked to do workshops in various places. And recently I was asked to do a workshop on what makes a quality international school. And that's a critical word, quality, because we're in a very, very aggressively competitive world in education. There are about 8,000 international schools in the world at the moment, slightly more actually. When I started teaching, there were about 400. In the next 10 years, maybe another 8,000. So we're looking at something in the region of 16 to 20,000 international schools within lifetimes of your children's school, probably. That's a lot of institutions, and quite frankly, there are not enough teachers to go around, because there are not enough teachers coming out of the English-speaking countries to fulfill teaching in those countries, as well as to staff 20,000 schools overseas. So we're going to hit a sort of critical point at some day in the future. It's an interesting problem. I will be retired by then, but it is an interesting problem. I'm going to talk this morning about quality, and it's very elusive. In this highly competitive world, parents have only got things like results to look at the quality of a school. It's very dangerous looking at sets of results. And I'll explain why. I'm going to tell you a story to start off. I tend to do this. That's the way I function. I was in my office last year, and a telephone call came in. It came in from a gentleman called Herman de Haan. And he said, "Oh, Neil, how are you doing? Can I come and have a coffee with you?" And I said, "Herman, what on earth are you doing in Thailand?" Because Herman de Haan was the CEO of Philips in Japan, in fact in Asia, when the World Cup was on in Japan, and he got me VIP tickets for all the games I needed, which is really good. So I owe him a big favour. But Herman was a parent of the school that I was the head of in Yokohama, and he had a son called Martin de Haan. And Martin wasn't very good in school. He was a really nice boy, he just wasn't very good in school. He had two massive ears that he had a thing about, and eventually had them pinned back, so they've disappeared now. But he's a good friend of one of my children. So Martin wasn't very, very good at all, but a really nice boy. And so he was going through school, we knew this, and then tragically his mother got cancer. And Herman decided that they ought to go back to the Netherlands, which is where he was from. So they went back, and Martin wasn't doing very well, and he missed the school tremendously, where he was very happy. And happiness is a very important thing in a school. And so his mother said, "We need to go back to his school, and what I want to do is see him graduate from Yokohama International School." So they came back. Fortunately, Herman was in that sort of position within the company that he could make those decisions. And so Martin stayed in the school. And he was on his mock examinations, his trial examinations, he got 19 points in the IB diploma. He needed 24. To get 5 more points was going to be almost impossible. It's really difficult for him. But his mother was happy that he was happy. And so he started to try and work, do his best. And amazingly, Martin got 24 points and won, and got awarded an IB diploma. That was all his mother wanted. Graduated, his mother died very soon afterwards. So it's a tragic story in that sense. What Herman said to me when he came to see me was, you know, Martin wouldn't have had the success he's had if it wasn't for the perseverance of the school and the fact that he was happy there and the attention that he was given. When I said, "How is Martin doing now?" he said, "Oh, you'll be pleased to know he's doing a PhD in hospital statistics, and he's about to marry a doctor. In fact, in June he married a doctor." That boy's life turned around because he got 1 point in the IB diploma, enough to get him through. So he graduated with 24 points. I tell that story because there's an irony about getting people through an IB diploma. Of course, most schools are very proud of the people who get 40 points, 44 points, top end. And many schools will remove students who are not going to do very well in the examination. In fact, there are many international schools around the world that will not take in students in the first place unless they're going to be successful. There are other schools that will then cream off the better students to do the IB examination, and the others will do something else. So that the exam results look really, really impressive. Average scores of 35, 36, 38. And if you look at websites and those schools that are achieving this, you look at them and think, whoa, 38 points, what a school. That's quite incredible, by the way. I know you don't particularly know about the IB diploma right now. But in actual fact, the world average is about 30, and what we do here is 33 points, which is way above the world average. And we're not selective at all. When I say at all, they've got to be able to speak English, but we will take students from just about anywhere and do the best we can. The other thing that we do with those students is that we give them a chance to do the examination. If we feel that it's not in the child's interest to push themselves through an IB diploma because it will be detrimental to them, we will allow them to take a different path. But in this last year, 95% of our 62 students in this year 13, 95% didn't just sit the diploma, they passed the diploma. But here's the irony. The more people who you get and you succeed with at 24 points, let's say you got 10 just making it through, you've got to change their lives forever, because that's almost the university cut-off point. The more you put in at that end, the lower your average becomes. So many schools will remove students who are in with a chance because it'll push their averages down and they won't look like a quality school. I mention that because it's the one statistic that parents love. And they go to all sorts of websites, they ask what's your exam result, what are your exam results like. Some schools only put 30% of their students in to sit the IB diploma, the best 30%. The reason I take a while to explain what's going on here is because we are an inclusive school at every level of the school, as best we can. We don't try to cream off students to make sure that we look good. We actually take in students from every nationality, every ability level, just about. If we cannot educate a child, we will let parents know, because sometimes we are the wrong school for a particular set of problems that a child might have. And it's no good pretending that we can do something about it when there are schools better equipped, and usually in the home countries, that can handle specific problems. So quality for me is not about statistics, although we do very well with statistics. Quality is about something much, much more important than that. It's taken a few years, over the last few years we're working very hard at bringing the best teachers we possibly can into this school. We have a good reputation internationally, and when we put an advertisement in wherever it is on the websites or out into the community of international schools, we generally get a lot of applicants. Anything from 50 to over 100 applicants for every single job. And so it might be because it's Phuket, of course. It's not because our packages are so outrageously wonderful. But it's also because I think that within the community of international schools we have a very good reputation. Not for exam results, although they are good, but for being a school that is caring and is happy. I think it's very hard. I had a very good school in Yokohama International School, but here I have a set of staff, 110 teachers, foreign teachers, plus other teachers, local teachers and so on, and teaching assistants. I think, hand on heart, I can say it's one of the happiest schools that I've worked in, but also one of the hardest working. And I think that's true for many of your children. Many of you are new, children come into the school, they ought to have teething problems. They ought to be really frightened to be in here. It takes a while. In fact, many of them will walk in and within 12 hours will love the place and then like to come back in. If that isn't the case, we'll take a look at it. And I think that is the distinguishing feature of a quality school. Because I do believe it's a quality school. We've got incredible facilities in some areas, in other areas less incredible, but we're working on it. But that doesn't make a quality school. We've got good exam results, better than world averages, way better than world averages. That doesn't make a quality school for the reasons I outlined. Schools can manipulate results very easily. If you ever ask a school, what are your results like, ask them several other things as well. How many of that year group actually sat the examination? And how selective are you at the beginning? Do you have a long waiting list and take only the best students? Many schools in the region have that. Unfortunately, you don't have to do that. You go to see Singapore, 4,000 students, and waiting lists are very long. LH in Singapore, same thing. When you have a long waiting list, you don't take the ones that are the weakest, you take the ones that are the strongest. That's just a reality, and unfortunate. Here on this island, there are 500,000 people living, plus or minus a few. It swells, obviously, with the tourists. There are about 5 or 6 major schools now. I think there are too many for the island, way too many, because we're all scrambling after the same group of students. It's a buyer's market. You can shop around. You can get cheaper fees. You can go to schools and discuss deals. The problem is that all schools on the island will be diminished if parents are moving around looking for the best deal. Because none of the schools will function at their optimum because there are so few residents in Phuket. And not all the schools are boarding schools. So we do a pretty good job of balancing act, of ensuring that all the children in the school are very happy, and more importantly, or as importantly, that the teachers are. I say as importantly, if not more importantly, because if you have an unhappy teacher, you will have an unhappy class. I guarantee you that. If you have a disagreement with your partner in the morning, you don't go to school, you don't go to work happy. You don't spend the day happy. You spend the day really upset. If you're unhappy, you will not do well in class, you will not teach well. And the critical thing about teaching is it's not about steps and chunks of information, it's about relationships. If I go back to when I was 8 years old, my staff have heard this story many times, my teacher, Miss Griffiths, who was an old lady, old, and she's sort of grey in my mind, she's woolen. You know, some people become woolen in your mind. She's sort of like a knitted cardigan. And I was 8, and she turned to me one day, and she said, I must have said something, I don't know what. She said, "Oh, you are our little historian," she said. I was 8 years old, our little historian. I thought, wow, is that what I am? And because she said that, I thought, well, I've got to be a historian for her. I liked it. This vague woolen blob, quite liked it. So I went off and I learned about history, because that was my role in life. Of course, I am a historian now. Went to university, studied history, loved history. I don't do enough of it here. And the irony is, 2 of my children are now history teachers. You know, look at the damage she did, or the good that she did. Of course, I always end that with, what a shame she didn't say my little hedge fund manager. My life could have been so different. So it's the relationships that matter. That's a quality school. It's very hard to pin that down. You can't measure it. You know it, but you can't tell me what it is. When you go around the school, you see children making a noise, a happy noise. When you go around, you won't find much graffiti. It's not because we shout at them, it's not because we punish them, they just don't see the need for it. I think there's a tremendous respect for the quality of teacher in this school by the students themselves. And because of that, they will not damage, they will not do things that are not right in a school. And they will care for one another, because I think that by and large the teachers here care for each other. That's quality. And I know, I've been in a lot of schools throughout my career. From time to time, you see students with their shirts not tucked in. Terrible thing that is. So we will sometimes say tuck your shirt in, but we won't bellow at people, put them into tension, do terrible things to them. We're not a coercive society. We don't force people to do things. We encourage them. That's the sort of school we are. Now I want to shift slightly to look at what happens to a human being throughout their lives, because although we've all had different educational backgrounds, and all of you will come from different types of schools, you've had different experiences, you didn't all have a woman smudge called Mrs. Griffiths who told you what you're going to be, and you've all got an experience yourselves. One thing about schools, and this is a difficult thing about schools for administrators, every parent is an expert because they've been to school. You know, many of your professions, people come to you because they don't know anything about what you're doing. That's why they're with you. But here, you're all experts because you've been to school. And you're pretty expert because the one thing in life that's more precious to you than anything else is your child. It's a very powerful mix. You know, the most precious thing in the world you're giving to me. And saying, look after him or her. It's an awesome responsibility. And then you watch it. And then on top of that, you're bringing in all your experience of schools. Because you all know, in a way, what you expect out of a school without actually knowing exactly what you expect out of a school. Does that make sense? You have a sort of vague idea. You have things like children come home really, really happy, and you say, obviously they're not pushing them hard enough. You know, why are they so happy? Go to school to work. And actually, in some cultures, that's a real problem. They come in with not 4 hours of homework and they're happy. Something's going wrong. What's going on in the school? That's not the way I was brought up. It doesn't work. You know, and it's understanding what's happening with your children that's very important. We know now far more than we ever used to. In the past, when we looked at young people and wondered what was going on inside there, all we are is what's between our ears. That's all. That's it. But we couldn't get at it. In the, before the last 30 years, really, the only time we could look at a brain was when it was a grey mass in a blob, looking like putty on a table after a post-mortem. We've got Einstein's brain. Have a look at that, see, great maths, chop it up, let's have a look at what's going on. You can't see it working, you can only see it dead, inert. But since the 1980s, we've got all sorts of manners of scans that are enable us to see how the brain works, how it functions, what it does at certain ages in development. That's only the last 20 years, maybe 30, since I've been a headmaster. You know, so that's quite a rapid change. When I first was a head, the fax was the fastest thing on this planet. And when a fax went, you, whoa, that must be important. I'll take 24 hours and I'll send the fax back. You know? And somebody wrote a letter, equally important, because writing a letter is hard work. The amount of stuff that came into me as a head was very little compared to what it is now, because now everybody just bangs everything on. I've had one-word emails from parents. I found that the other day. One word. Oof. What am I supposed to do? If I sent one-word email back, I would be very rude. They would be telling everybody you're a bad guy or a bad son. You know, so the world has changed. But one thing has changed very well for us is for us to understand how young people are. Now, I'm going to give you a very basic, quick run through the human brain, because that's what we're dealing with. And when a child is born, the child is not born with a fully sized brain, fully merged brain. If you look at a young baby, the head of a very young baby is slightly bigger than my fist, very small. Within 2 years, that head, or within 3 years certainly, the head will be almost human size. That's why you see little babies' little heads, which are fantastic. By the time they get to 3 years of age, they've got a big head on little body, because their brain has grown after birth. That's very, very significant. That's why we are the way we are, human beings, because we have to nurture that brain when it's born. Most of the growing is in the first couple of years of life. And most of the things that it needs to set it up for the rest of his or her life occurs in a critical period of the first 3 years. Not at 18, just before university. It's the first 3 years. And in those first 3 years, the brain is primed for speech, for social cues, for the emotions, love, for attachment, and sight. All these sorts of things developed in the first 3 years. And we know that. And that goes on a little bit further, say the first 5 years. The learning of the human brain just skyrockets for the first few years of a child's early learning. And that's why our early learning centre is not there to teach people to read, because the ability for brains to start to learn to read, for example, most brains, nearly all brains, in fact I'd say all brains, that's not there until much later. The Finns send their children to school at the age of 7. The first 7 years of their lives they're at home with the family, learning all that stuff that kids should learn. We start our school here at 18 months. So we have to provide the sort of enriched environment that they could get at home. We have to. And that means, if you go down to the early learning, I don't know if we've got early learning parents here, that means that we have to get socialization going. We need lots of language going on. Some of these children are coming in here having learned a little bit of language from that's not English. So you have to get language going. But the important thing for these young children is to learn how to communicate with each other and how to understand social situations. That gives them the emotional stability to learn later. If we get that wrong, then we're going to have problems later on. It's not a question about intellect, it's about just they're not ready. It's really, really important that if they are coming in that early, we must provide them everything that they would get at home. In fact, we provide, in a way, more, because we're constantly playing with them. That's a terrible word, play. It's so frightening to parents, because they think that play is a dreadful thing. You don't go to school to play. You know, that's a load of nonsense, if you don't mind my saying. So you do go to school to play. Because play is experiencing, it's rehearsing life situations. You actually do go to school to play. In fact, that's what most of the kids do all the way through. And I'm still doing. I have as much fun as I can in school with my colleagues. I like to play. Because that is a very advanced social skill. So in these first rapid few years of life, and by the way, if a child doesn't learn to speak by the age of 10, even though you get the child and start talking to them later on, the chances are they will never learn to speak. We know this because there have been children brought out of the wild at that age and can never learn to speak. It's also really important why we have to care for young children, because the capacity to love is developed in those first few years. If you don't love that child, if that child does not experience love and fully develops love in their own brain, in their own mind, in their own personality, they will have difficulty to love later on. You can affect a child forever if that love is absent in the first few years of life. Unfortunately, it's tragic that we understand now that those who are abused or have terrible situations when they're young end up being abusers and repeating what they've learned. So that capacity for love and trust is really important. A quality school, you will find that occurs naturally in a school. The children trust the teachers, they love the teachers, they love you. That's all part of that early year learning. And then there's a period after that, and learning is just, your brain, every human brain, 100 billion neurons. 100 billion neurons, that's staggering. Baby, 100 billion neurons, me, 100 billion neurons minus a few. But I'm working on it, because you can still keep working the brain. The brain is highly plastic, but it has certain periods when it's not so plastic. So then in the upper primary, it consolidates. all the little connections, the dendrites, the little wavy things off the neurons link up and join up. There are trillions of these little things in your brain linking up, joining up. And there are more of these little wavy things called dendrites in a human brain than there are leaves on the trees of every wood, of every forest in the entire world. They're all up there. And the possible connections, the various possible ways of connecting all of these little dendrites, far greater than the sum of every atom in the universe. There are trillions and trillions of these things, and if you go through different combinations every time, more possible combinations than there are atoms in the universe. You know, if I can take this little girl here, she has got 100 billion neurons, and she's got more possible connections in there than, not just at the moment, possibly slightly fewer, but she's still growing. I'll talk about that in a minute. It's an extraordinary thing. You ask, if that's the case, why can't I get my child 2 extra points in an examination? You've got 100 billion, then you have all these other connections. Why can't we do it? We can, of course. They have the capacity. Learning is not about forcing stuff in. It's about the receptiveness of the learner. That's what makes the difference. If they're receptive to it, it'll work. Which is why things that just block off children, and I think video games can be one of them, why you start blocking off stuff and cause a problem later on. Okay, they go through early primary, and all these little things start to connect and join up and all the rest. And they're consolidated in sleep. They're consolidated while the child sleeps. A child will sleep all the way through till 8 hours, 9 hours, and they have something called rapid eye movement periods, around 5 of them. And when there's rapid eye movement, you know that they're dreaming. And they have to go through a cycle of all of these, and there's a final rapid eye movement period that information from the preceding day is consolidated or ditched. So if your child doesn't get enough sleep, they're not going to learn well. It's just reality, it's a fact. We know that. Science knows this. So that's what's happening. These kids are like sponges. Kids in primary school are like sponges. They're everywhere. I love them dearly. They love the teacher. It's incredible. If I go down to early year learning, sometimes they come on and grab me around the knees. Just down there. I go, oh, I love it down there for about 10 minutes. I've got to get up there. I'm not an early years teacher. I can only do so much early years stuff. I had a wonderful meal brought me yesterday. Yeah, I shouldn't say this, but it had 2 big blobs in it that looked really weird. A pile of crispy stuff and some stuff on a stick. And I looked at it, and they were going around with these little clips, and it was fantastic, it was brilliant, but I'm not sure I could eat it. I was very worried, you know, I don't know how it was put together. So I said, I'll have it later. Because they love you at that age. And they do in primary. One of the saddest things often is a parent comes up and says, oh, I don't know what the school's done to my child. They've joined secondary, and you've done something to them, and they're awful. They're terrible at home. They're horrible people. And I blame secondary education. Or Mr. Moret, what we've done to my child. Last year my child was really nice. This year they were real horrors. You know? And that's because their brains are changing. Because there's a second period that is critical in the development of a human being, and that is when they become adult. We've given the name adolescent and teenager to stuff, but those are later terms. You know, most young people were adult by about the age of 13, 14 in the past. They weren't adult at 21, 18, whatever. There's a very nice plaque in the church I went to in my school when I was in Wales. And he was in a church, and it was a man had died, but he was 17-something, surgeon from London. He was 21. There's no way you'd let the 21-year-old open you up. You'd have a look inside and show you back up again. 21. That's the age when we've decided they become adults, although the law's decided 18. I mean, all these are arbitrary periods. So, anyway, they become adult from the age anything from 12, 11, 12, 13, 14, there's that period when massively, during the primary years, you've created more connections. And when they're teenagers, they start pruning, just like a hedge. You're chopping bits off. They fix what their brain's going to be like, pretty much. Not fix, but you know, they sort of make it who they are. They start pruning it. I could show you a slide of all the neurons and the connections in a 2-year-old, in a 6-year-old, in a 14-year-old, and in an adult. And the adult's got fewer connections than the 14-year-old. Because the 14-year-old's got a mess of stuff up there, and they're trying to work it out, and their emotional parts of the brain are connecting with the prefrontal cortex, the executive part of the brain. There's a bit in the brain, the amygdala, that controls emotions, and there's a bit at the front in the cortex that controls the functions, the executive functions. Makes you do the right thing. And that is always badly connected. And that's why teenagers are very clever and very, very stupid. Take massive risks, but can probably work out all sorts of mathematical theorems. You think, oh, if they can do that, why are they doing this? It's because their brains are exploding in there. And one thing they must do for the survival of the human species, believe me, this is true, they've got to rebel against you guys. They have to take control. So between the ages of about 13, 14, and some of you may be there right now, all the way up to about 16, 17, before the exams start bearing down on them, they are going to take control from you and want it for themselves. And this is where parenting becomes very, very tough. Because parents have to control their children still. You can't let them do what they want, because they'll do crazy stuff. They will. They might be clever, they might be able to get to university, but they'll do crazy stuff. Because the myelination of the connections is not perfect. And they do stupid things. So you have to, as parents then, and as schools, we have to watch them very carefully. We have to allow them to take more control of themselves, but at the same time, we must not allow them to do stupid stuff. Sometimes we do, because then we can say, that was stupid, wasn't it? And they go, yeah, that was stupid, and then we can teach them. So, you have most important critical period from under the age of 3, then you have a consolidation, and then they decide to grow up, become adult, and they're going to tear away from you, their brains are going crazy. They begin to settle down a little bit as you come towards examination, but they're still crazy brains. We let them do the exams, then we send them off to university, and there they still do crazy stuff, about 22 before it starts to settle down, and then they become adults, and the person that you thought, God, what a monster, has come back to you. If you can do that safely, you've done a wonderful job. That's what we are aware of, that's what we are facing in school. We are trying to give an appropriate education to the first stage of learning, the rapid growth of learning that takes place under the age of 5. We are consolidating up to the age of about year 7. When they come into secondary, they are pretty wild. You know, my worst class is always in year 8 or even year 7. You know, what have we got next? I've got year 7 football. Because you go in and they're all over the place. You tell them to do something, and goes, what have we got to do now? I'll tell you, you use your pencils. Is this pencil? You know, all that stuff. Just all over the place. Of course, the problem with that incredible period when they're trying to take control and they will rebel against parents, and they throw their clothes everywhere. If you sweat that, if you just get so upset that they've got a messy room, you're going to face much more stress than that. You know, if they've got a messy room, shut the door. Don't stress it. You know. Sooner or later they're going to have to tidy that room up themselves, and just don't stress. But yeah, I can tell you lots of stories about that. I've 4 children, by the way. They're grown up, but they never leave you. The umbilical cord is made of bungee rubber. They keep bouncing back. And I've forgotten where I was then. I said, where was it? It doesn't really matter. Yes, I know where I was. Yes, apart from all of this pulling away from you, pulling away from teachers, authority figures, they're their own people. They're trying to develop their sense of who they are. And that means they don't want you to tell them, they want me to tell them. And that's what we've got to manage very carefully. The middle years is a tricky period in schools. Really tricky. And it doesn't make sense just to say, well, they've got to pass an examination here, so they've got to know that, know that, know that, know that, know that, know that, and they just, well, we do that, we do that, we do that, we do that. If we did that, we'd lose those children. Teachers have to be like nurses, like parents, like all sorts of things to keep those young people not excited, but at least okay. Sometimes excited. Because if the relationship is good, they will learn. Because that's what they do. You're learning that. Everybody learns all the time. They will learn. The minute you force something in them, they switch off. It's a reason why I hate to hear teachers telling a child off. Because the last time your partner told you off, and then tried to teach you something within 5 minutes of that, you weren't there. Because the anger has blocked everything. And that's what happens in the school. If you're coercive, if you're pushing, it'll block everything, and then the learning won't take place. But that messy period, the reason why I'm taking a long time to discuss that messy period as a teenager, because something else kicks in, which is a disaster for all of us trying to manage these young people. The hormones kick in as well. And hormones will get them going in every direction. They'll probably fall in love, fall out of love, like somebody got to suddenly start talking to girls and boys. And so you've got this child, 13, 14, 15-year-old, a mess up there, trying to pull away, trying to work out who they are, who suddenly now notices everybody else around them, and they're sort of looking at the boy, girl, whatever it is, and then they're conscious of how they look. Very conscious of how they look, how they, how they walk. So when they start developing the walks at age. Up to then, they're just walking everywhere. Now, it's a developed walk, because they've got to look cool. I don't know what they are. Sometimes sort of a kick for boys now, not girls. Girls will sort of start to walk like that and put their stuff on. The boys will be swaggering around or doing something. So we all start putting on our walk. Because everybody's looking at you. They think, we think. So we've got that that's kicking in, and it's really, really tough for them. Our job as teachers is to understand that and try and work with them and not harm them emotionally for anything that they do. And then we've got to teach them physics or French or Spanish or Mandarin. How do you do that? How do you have 40 minutes of this mess, this blob, this hormone-driven blob who's trying to grow dendrites everywhere in the wrong way, and then you say, right, now I'm going to teach you Mandarin for 40 minutes. Doesn't make sense. Believe me, if they'd like someone in that room, they're not going to be worried about Mandarin. They'll be going to look all the time at the person. It's hard work. It doesn't mean we can't do it. What it means is we as teachers must develop relationships with the students that are sympathetic and caring, but with an idea of where they need to be and where they need to go. And that's what makes a quality school. Could it be mine now? If that's what makes a quality school, and not big sets of results everywhere. By the way, the children come back to you at about the age of 18, they start to love you, they know they need you, and it's fantastic. But it is a journey. You know it's a journey. You've got kids. And they'll all be different as well. It's not as if they're all the same. They're all wildly different. And in a class of 20 students, and you start the lesson, here I am doing Henry VIII. This is good news for children from all over the world. Henry the Tudor England. That makes sense. So I've got to try and fire them up for Tudor England. And of course, one or two of them might be fired up. In fact, all of them might. Right at the start, I say, that's 6 wives. Oh, it's a lot of wives. It's a good one. Chop the heads off a couple. Whoa, that's good. So they've got them. And so they'll learn, and then one of them will decide, he's had enough, and he'll just drop off. You won't see it, because they'll still be looking at you. And if you look at them, they look intelligent. because that's what we do. And then, when that one kicks in, the other one might have dropped off. In fact, 3 might have dropped off by then. And another 2 might drop off in a 5 minutes' time. They might all come back in, who knows? I talk about this because this is part of what being a teacher is. It is not a simple algorithm, you know, you do this, you do that, you do that, they do that homework, they come in, they pass an exam. It's much, much, much more than that, always. I believe that we've got an incredible group of professionals who can do that here. And you as parents, I'd like you to talk with us if you feel there's something that's not right. Please come in and talk to us. Please also understand that the biggest task that we have as teachers is to establish that relationship that will enable the child of whatever nationality to want to learn with that teacher. I want lots of wool and smudge Mrs. Griffiths in this school, and I have lots of them. And you never, never know when one teacher says something that will make something happen for that child, that sparks that child. You never know. You don't know what it can be. I've talked too long on that topic, or I should let you go in a moment. I just want to talk yet. The other thing that I think is important in the school is to provide your children with opportunity. Many schools are very driven. You join this end and come up that end, and if you get to Oxford, Cambridge, the Ivy Leagues, wherever it is, a job done. I actually think that that very narrow path through to university is not necessarily the best path now. I have 2 children loaded with huge debt, £28,000 each, just about to pay off because they went through university in the UK. I did not money to pay them through. So that's a big, big debt. And unfortunately, they became teachers, they got a career, it's a wonderful career. Unfortunately, it's not sort of career, especially if you start teaching, when you're going to get huge amounts of money to pay off debts like that. It means they can't buy a house. For many years, probably. So we have to start thinking about the future and about what it is, what world we're in. And of course, the added complication to all of that is that technology has now come into our lives in a big way. I joked about faxes being the fastest thing on the planet when I came ahead. And so in my time, this 25-year period, we've gone on to the state of technology that we're in today. And we need to find opportunities for young people to embrace that technology in a positive way, use the technology. And we have to think a little bit more creatively about the types of futures they're going to have, the types of universities they need to get to. If we as parents decide, or schools, that it's got to be Harrow or Yale or nothing, we're missing the point, because some of the best courses in the world are not in those universities. In fact, the top university in the world is acknowledged as MIT. Nobody panics about that, and that's in the States. In fact, most of the universities in the top 50 in the world recognized by far and away in the United States. So you've got to start thinking as you take your children through, what is it that you want? The world's getting smaller. You don't have to go back to your own country to think about what is potentially possible for your children. And we have good counsellors here. We've got many systems here that can help with that. Many of you who have heard rumours will know that the school is in a period of transition, and that North Anglia, which is a very big corporate school group, 50 schools around the world, are attempting to take over the management of the school, at least manage the school. And the Thai owners and North Anglia are currently in negotiations. We the senior management team, had meetings with North Anglia, and they've assured us that should they take over, that we will maintain our positions, if we so wish, and that they will maintain the school as it is, and that we will continue to offer the sort of opportunities that we do. We have at the top end of the school a business academy that's got nothing to do with exams, an art academy, nothing to do with exams. I'm looking at a media academy, and we've also got sport academy, football, triathlon, in tennis, in swimming, and so on. All of these are at a higher level than you get in a normal school. We have hundreds of children, not tens, hundreds of children taking swimming. We have hundreds taking football, and we have a couple of hundred, I believe, doing tennis. So what the figure is exactly might be about 220. We have some doing triathlons. Your children need to be physically active because that's really good for the brain. Eat well, physically active, sleep properly. But if I can just mention sleep, sorry, I'd like to go back to North Anglia. Children's melatonin, the release of melatonin takes place later with children, with teenagers. They stay up till 11, 12 o'clock. It's not their fault, they're not trying to play games with you. It's just that physically the body changes and the young people, 30, 40, 50, 16, will typically feel tired at about 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, not 10 o'clock, not 8 o'clock, not 9 o'clock. For me it's about 9 o'clock. For teenagers it's that age. And they really do need a full cycle of sleep. They really do. So you've got to consider that, you know, your children always get a full cycle of sleep because that's what affects learning. Eat well as well, and less time in front of the screen. If you go to use screens, I throw this in very quickly, if you're going to use screens to allow them to look at computers, they should do it at the beginning of the session, at the evening, not the end. One of the things that affects the release of melatonin is the flashing of bright screen. It's not like television, which is slightly different with bright screen. And what you do, if you look at that, you can end up, your children, if they've got a very bright screen, very late at night, they'll have real difficulty getting to sleep. And then they're tossing and turning. And then they may get up and just do a bit more on the computer. I wouldn't give children a computer in their bedrooms. It's my personal comment to you, but each to their own, you do what you wish, but that's important. Let me go back to North Anglia anyway. North Anglia, and my owners are negotiating. Fortunately, we've still got our jobs. We didn't know that until we came back, but we do still have our jobs either way. And we'll probably know within the next 6 weeks what's happening. Once that happens, I think then we will start investing in the school again. We've not done that. North Anglia would invest in the school, but I think our current owners would need to invest in the school also. We need certain things in the school. We are going to invest. The security system needs to be improved. I'd like the arts to be developed. We have certain types of facilities that we need to improve as well. So that will happen. So there'll be a little period at the moment when we can't do that, but we will be doing it. I'll end there because I've been going on for some time. I suppose if I'm looking for one word to sum up what I feel is necessary on all sides, and if you haven't got it, you're going to have a terrible time with the school, and we will have a terrible time with you, and that is trust. The reason I talk about not, you know, and this is our number of activities we have, and here's the number of fields we've got, the number of musical instruments we play, and these are the productions we do every year. All that is part of schools. The critical thing, if you want a quality school, is trust. I trust my staff. I hope they trust me. The children have to trust us, and the parents too need to trust us. So if there's anything that's getting in the way of that trust, and it is a trust because you give us your children, you must talk it over with me or with the relevant person. Because trust is really important for your children. If you around the table start talking, if you're eating around the table and start talking about that terrible school, or I've had enough of dealing with that teacher, and your child is listening, you've just destroyed trust. You've not got it, you passed it on. And it doesn't help us then. So trust is what makes the school work. I believe that it's a quality institution for some of the reasons I've outlined. I think you have to be very aware of statistics, because statistics can always be manipulated. It's a gut feel. That's what schools are about, a gut feel. And if your gut does not feel good, you need to come in. We're very open. My door's always open. I know that my principal's doors are always open. But that's really what it's all about. And then if you trust the school, your children will. And that trust will make them love the school. If they love the school, they will learn. There's one thing you can do that will make your children learn. It's give them the confidence to trust the school. Probably not what you expected from a talk for a headmaster. But after all this time, I feel that's a critical thing, that we're dealing with young people. And we do know a lot about young people. And we're willing to share it, we're willing to have these discussions. And that's what makes a quality institution. The rest will follow. The purpose of schools is not to get kids through examinations. Examination success is a consequence of a good school, not the purpose.